The galaxy made a mistake the day it looked at Earth and saw nothing special. Not a threat, not a power, just a quiet blue world drifting at the edge of space. But that was only what they thought. High above Earth's sky, massive alien ships appeared without warning. They blocked the sun for moments, casting huge moving shadows over cities, oceans, and deserts. People stopped everything and looked up, unsure if they were about to die or be saved. No one spoke at first because the sight was too unreal. Then the panic started slowly, like a crack spreading through glass. In orbit, Earth's leaders were taken aboard a giant council ship. The interior was not built for comfort, it was built for judgment. Cold metal halls stretched endlessly, glowing with strange blue lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. Every step the humans took echoed loudly, as if the ship itself was listening. The air felt heavy, like even breathing was being measured. At the center of the ship was a circular chamber. Dozens of alien species were already there, watching in silence. Some had glowing eyes, some had armored skin, some floated slightly above their seats, and in the middle stood humanity's representatives. Not soldiers, not warriors, just diplomats chosen for their calm voices. But now, even their calm was breaking under pressure. One alien finally spoke, its voice mechanical and cold. Species identified. Human, it said. Assessment complete. A pause followed, long and uncomfortable. Then another alien projected glowing data into the air. Low technological advancement, it said. High emotional instability. The word emotional was said like a weakness, like a defect. A human diplomat tried to speak, but his voice came out slower than he expected. What is this assessment for? The council ignored the question. Instead, the largest alien in the room slowly rose. Its body was covered in metallic layers like a living machine. Its voice echoed through every wall. This species has no strategic value as an independent civilization. A silence followed that felt heavier than the words themselves. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Humanity is approved for transfer. The human diplomat froze. Transfer to where? He asked, forcing his voice to stay steady. The answer came without hesitation. As assets to the outer trade network. For a moment, no one on the human side understood. Then, slowly, the meaning settled in. Not trade, not alliance, not protection, ownership. Back on Earth, the message arrived through global channels. Screens in every city displayed the same translation. People stood still, reading it again and again, hoping it would change, but it did not. At first, there was confusion, then fear, then silence so deep it felt like the planet itself stopped breathing. Governments tried to respond immediately. Messages were sent, warnings were issued, negotiations were requested, but every signal disappeared into nothing, unanswered, ignored, erased. Above Earth, the alien ships did not move aggressively. They did not fire weapons, they did not destroy cities. They simply waited, patient and certain, as if the outcome was already decided. Then the transport ships arrived. Huge vessels descended slowly into the atmosphere. They covered entire skies like moving mountains, blocking stars from view. Doors opened without sound, and calm alien voices instructed humanity to board. Cooperation ensures survival, they said. Resistance ensures termination. People began to move, slowly at first, then in waves. Families held each other tightly, unsure if they would ever see home again. Children did not fully understand what was happening, but they understood fear. And yet, something strange began to appear. Humans were not reacting the way the aliens expected. There were tears, yes. There was fear, yes. But there was also something else, silence that felt controlled, not broken. A soldier watching from a distance whispered into his comms, "They are not resisting," he said, confused, "but they are also not surrendering." The report was ignored. marked as irrelevant. Inside the loading zones, humans entered the ships one by one. Metal doors closed behind them with heavy finality, and Earth grew quieter with every departure. But inside those ships, the silence was different. It was not empty. It was watching, remembering, learning, because humanity was not defeated. It was simply being moved, and in that movement, something unknown had already begun to grow. Darkness did not feel like an end for humanity. It felt like a beginning they did not yet understand. The transport ships traveled far beyond Earth's system, across regions of space humans had never seen, past glowing nebulae, broken starfields, and silent dead zones where no signals existed. Inside the ships, humans sat in sealed compartments, not chained in the way old stories described, but controlled through fields, sensors, and silent alien systems. No one spoke much because words felt dangerous now. Every human understood one thing clearly. They were no longer citizens of Earth. They were classified as property, and that single word changed everything in their minds. When the ships finally arrived, they did not land on a single planet. They split humanity across many worlds. Each world had a different purpose, a different kind of suffering. One planet was covered in endless mineral fields. Humans were sent there to dig deep into glowing ground that burned their hands slowly. The sky was always red, like a wound that never healed. Another world was a frozen mining colony. Ice storms moved across the surface like living blades. Humans worked in silence, breaking frozen rock under constant alien supervision. A third world was not physical labor. It was biological experimentation. Humans were placed in controlled environments where alien scientists studied their reactions to fear, stress, and isolation. But something strange began happening everywhere. The aliens expected collapse. They expected broken minds, disobedience, or death from despair. That was how other species reacted. But humans did not follow the pattern. At first, they stayed quiet, observing everything. They watched guards, routines, schedules, and machine behavior. Even while working, their eyes were always learning, always measuring. One alien overseer commented in a report, "They adapt faster than expected." But the council ignored it, labeling it irrelevant efficiency variance. Days turned into cycles. Cycles turned into months. And slowly, something began forming between human groups across different worlds, not communication through technology. That was impossible under alien control. But something older, more primitive, and more powerful. Patterns, memory sharing, observation codes, silent coordination. On the mineral world, a human worker dropped a tool at a specific rhythm. On another world, a similar rhythm was repeated in a different task. On a third world, the same pattern appeared again. The aliens did not notice. To them, it looked like coincidence. But humans did not believe in coincidence anymore. In one mining facility, a young human technician quietly repaired a broken alien scanner. He did it without permission, without instruction. The alien supervisor watched but did not stop him, assuming it was harmless efficiency. What it did not realize was simple. The human had just learned how the system saw everything, and that knowledge spread silently. On another world, a group of humans were assigned to clean storage corridors. They moved slowly, carefully, always looking at walls, doors, and energy nodes. They were not cleaning. They were mapping. Every slave world had one thing in common. It was controlled by centralized systems. Systems that believed humans were too weak to understand them. That belief was the first crack. One night cycle, something small happened. A power fluctuation in a minor facility caused temporary system lag. Nothing serious, nothing worth reporting. But in that brief moment, something changed. A human worker touched a control panel that was briefly exposed. Not to escape, not to rebel, but simply to see how far control reached. That moment was recorded by no alien system as important, But in human memory, it became everything. Because now they knew the system could be touched, the system could be read, and if it could be read, it could be understood. Across multiple worlds, humans began adjusting their behavior slightly. Not enough to alert supervision, but enough to build invisible structure, small signals hidden in normal movement, tiny adjustments in timing, position, and action. To an alien observer, nothing changed. To humanity, everything was starting to align. One overseer reviewed reports and said casually, "They remain compliant." Another replied, "They show no resistance at all." But somewhere deep inside the network of slave worlds, something was no longer compliance. It was calculation. And for the first time since Earth fell silent, humanity was no longer just surviving. It was preparing. Something changed in the slave worlds, but at first the galaxy did not notice, because nothing looked broken, nothing looked attacked, nothing looked wrong at all, and that was exactly what made it dangerous. On a mineral mining planet, the night shift began as usual. Hundreds of humans walked into deep tunnels under alien guard systems. The air was heavy, filled with dust and machine heat. The overseers watched from above, relaxed and confident. Humans had been working here for months without major incident. They believed control was complete. But at the end of that shift, something did not return. A group of 12 humans was missing. At first, the guards assumed delay, maybe injury, maybe tunnel collapse, maybe exhaustion. Nothing unusual for slave labor. But when the next cycle began, the tunnels were empty. No bodies, no alarms, no signs of struggle, just silence. The alien supervisor checked the logs. Everything looked normal until the last recorded minute. Then the system simply stopped tracking them. No error message, no breach alert, just absence. That was the first warning. On another world, a bioprocessing facility ran routine scans every hour. Humans were placed in controlled chambers for testing behavioral response. The system was flawless, or so they believed. Until one chamber opened and no human was inside, no breach alarms triggered, no containment failure recorded, the chamber simply reported empty, as if it had always been empty. The scientists recalculated, maybe miscount, maybe data corruption, maybe system lag. But deep inside their logic, something uncomfortable started forming. Across multiple worlds, similar reports appeared. Small groups missing, always without violence, always without trace. One alien officer finally spoke during a report session. "This is not escape behavior," it said. "It is removal without detection." The council dismissed it immediately. "Impossible," they responded. "Humans lack coordination capability at this scale." But then the third disappearance happened. This time, an entire storage wing vanished on a transport moon. No broken doors, no damaged systems, no distress signals, just empty space where hundreds of humans had been assigned. Now the pattern was no longer ignorable. A high-ranking alien analyst reviewed all incidents across sectors. It projected data streams into the council chamber, lines of missing records stretched across multiple star systems, and then something worse appeared. The disappearances were synchronized, not random, not chaotic, but timed, measured, controlled. One council member leaned forward, voice uncertain. "Are they being taken by an external force?" it asked. "No known ships have entered these regions," came the reply. Another voice interrupted sharply. "Then they are coordinating internally." That sentence caused silence in the chamber, because it implied intelligence, structure, intent, things humanity was not supposed to have under slave classification. On a mining world, a guard finally reported something strange. He said he saw humans walking into maintenance tunnels without orders, but when he followed, the tunnels were empty. No exit points, no hidden doors, no footprints beyond a certain point. Just disappearance, as if reality itself stopped tracking them. Fear began spreading through alien personnel, not fear of attack, but fear of not understanding, because every system they trusted showed control, and yet control was clearly being lost. On one ship, a technician checked surveillance recordings. It saw humans enter a corridor, it saw them continue walking, then, suddenly, nothing. The feed did not cut, it did not glitch, it simply showed empty hallway afterward, as if the humans were never there. The technician replayed it again and again. Same result, same silence, same impossible absence. It reported the anomaly to command, but the response was cold and dismissive. "System error," they said. "Do not escalate trivial data noise." But the technician did not feel reassured, because now it noticed something else. Other systems were also showing normal, even when reality was clearly not normal anymore. Back in the council chamber, discussions grew louder. Some believed sabotage, some believed unknown external intelligence, others refused all explanations completely. But one fact remained unchanged: humans were disappearing without leaving traces, and the most terrifying part was not the loss, it was the silence after it. Because in every confirmed case, there were no screams, no resistance, no panic signals, no last transmissions, just clean absence. As if humanity was not being taken, but being erased from where it once stood, and somewhere across the slave network, deep inside hidden patterns no alien system could yet detect. Something was beginning to align fully, because the first disappearances were never about escape. They were about proof that the system could fail. And once that proof existed, everything else became possible. The galaxy thought the disappearances were random errors, but humanity knew better. Nothing that precise is ever random. Nothing that silent is ever accidental. Across slave worlds, humans continued their work as if nothing had changed. They still mined, cleaned, tested, and obeyed instructions. At least, that is what the aliens believed. But under that surface, something deeper was forming, something invisible to every alien system. On a mining world, a human worker dropped a tool at a specific angle. A guard noticed it, but ignored it as clumsiness. What the guard did not know was simple. That angle was not random, it was a signal. On another world, a cleaning crew moved in a slightly different pattern, a shift in direction by just a few steps. To aliens it meant nothing. To humans it meant confirmation, because now they were connected again, not through technology, not through communication devices, but through behavior itself. Every slave world had surveillance, but surveillance only saw actions, not meaning, and humans had learned to hide meaning inside action. A mining tunnel light flickered 3 times in one cycle. That same flicker pattern appeared on another planet days later, then again in a biolab. To aliens, it was system instability. To humans, it was language. Slowly, across the galaxy, a hidden structure began to form, not built from machines, but from repetition, memory, and timing. One alien supervisor reported something strange. "Humans are performing tasks with no efficiency loss," it said, "but they are also synchronized across units." The council dismissed it immediately. "Impossible across separated systems," they replied. "No communication infrastructure exists." And that was their mistake, because humanity was no longer using infrastructure. It was using observation. Every slave world had the same patterns, same shifts, same schedules, same oversight gaps. Humans studied those gaps like maps. And then something small happened that changed everything. On a transport moon, a maintenance cycle failed for exactly 9 seconds. Not enough to trigger alarms, not enough to draw attention, just a tiny pause in system control, but in that pause, a human technician accessed a terminal. Not to escape, not to sabotage, but to copy something simple. Timing data. nothing more. That data was meaningless to aliens, but to humans it was alignment proof. Now they knew the system had rhythm, and anything with rhythm can be predicted. Across multiple worlds, humans began adjusting their movements slightly, a step here, a pause there, a delayed response in speech or action, nothing visible enough to trigger suspicion. But when combined across thousands of individuals, it formed patterns that no alien mind was designed to recognize. In one facility, a guard noticed humans stopping for half a second before tasks. He wrote it off as fatigue. But that half second was not fatigue. It was synchronization. And synchronization was growing. A hidden network was forming without signals, without devices, without contact. Only through shared memory of observation, one alien analyst reviewed multiple incident reports again. This time more carefully, it noticed something unsettling. All missing human events occurred after identical behavioral shifts. It flagged the data for Council review, but the Council still refused concern. Correlation without causation, they said. But the analyst did not agree, because now the system itself felt wrong, not broken, but rewritten in ways it could not detect. On a slave transport vessel, a captain watched humans working silently. They showed no aggression, no panic, no visible planning. Yet the captain felt uneasy for reasons it could not explain. It ordered additional scans. All results showed normal compliance, but still, something felt off. Because every system said control was perfect, yet control was clearly slipping. Across the galaxy, humans continued their work, but inside their minds, something new existed. A shared awareness built from patterns, timing, and memory. Not a single leader, not a single command, but a distributed understanding. And in that understanding, one truth was becoming clear. The galaxy had not enslaved individuals, it had connected them. Every slave world was now part of a silent structure, and every silence was beginning to speak. The aliens still believed they were watching labor, but in reality they were watching the construction of something they could not yet name. Because humanity had stopped reacting as prisoners and started behaving like a system. And systems do not stay still forever. Something broke in the silence of the galaxy. Not loudly, not with explosions at first, but with absence where presence should have been. A major supply world stopped responding. It was a core hub for slave distribution, heavily guarded, heavily monitored. Nothing ever escaped from it. Until now, the first alert came from orbit sensors. No fleet movement, no distress signal, no escape transmission. Just sudden system blackout across the entire planet network. The Council initially assumed a power failure, or local system corruption, or minor technical collapse. But then the second report arrived. All orbital defense ships were gone. Not destroyed, not drifting, just missing from tracking systems. That word again, missing. On the surface below, alien supervisors tried to access control grids, but every terminal responded with the same message. Connection unavailable. Not error, not breach, just absence of control. And that was when panic started to enter the command chain. One officer ordered emergency scanning of the planet. Drones were deployed across key regions. What they found made no sense at all. Facilities were intact. Infrastructure was untouched. Work zones were still active. But humans were no longer following visible supervision patterns. They were simply not where they were supposed to be. A mining supervisor reported something worse. "I saw them working 10 minutes ago," it said. "Now the tunnels are empty. No alarms, no struggle, no escape traces. Just silence again." In orbit, the Council demanded immediate explanation. "Where is the human labor force?" they asked. The planet governor responded with confusion. "They are not detected anywhere on surface or underground systems." A pause followed, heavy and uncertain. Then came the first terrifying conclusion: they were removed. But removed by what? No ships had entered the system. No external invasion had been recorded. No known technology signature matched the disappearance, and yet an entire world of humans had vanished from visible control. On another monitoring station, a technician reviewed archived sensor data. It replayed the last hour before blackout. Everything looked normal: routine movement, standard labor cycles. But when slowed down frame by frame, something appeared. Tiny gaps in tracking data, milliseconds of missing visibility, not enough to trigger alarms individually, but across thousands of humans, those gaps aligned, perfectly synchronized. The technician stared at the screen longer than necessary, because the pattern was not random. It was structured. It reported the finding, but Command dismissed it immediately. Data noise from system lag, they said. But fear had already started to spread in lower ranks, because now it was not just disappearances. It was coordination at scale. Back on the surface world, alien guards attempted manual control. They moved into human work zones physically, but found something unexpected. Humans were still present, still working, still responding, still obeying instructions. And yet, something felt wrong, because the system showed empty zones, while eyes saw people. Or eyes saw people while systems showed emptiness. Both could not be true at the same time. One guard finally shouted in confusion, "They are here, but not here." That sentence was logged and ignored, but it was the most accurate description anyone had given. On the council ship, emergency discussion escalated. Some argued external stealth fleet involvement. Others argued unknown cloaking technology. But one analyst quietly said something no one wanted to hear. If it were external, we would see entry signatures. Silence followed. Then the analyst continued. But if it is internal, then the humans are not escaping. They are reorganizing. That word changed the room temperature instantly. Reorganizing meant intelligence, structure, intent, not escape behavior, not survival instinct, but coordinated transformation. On multiple worlds, systems began showing increasing instability. Not full failure, but small consistent distortions, timing mismatches, missing logs, delayed responses, nothing critical. Yet, but all of it pointed in one direction. Human presence was no longer passive. A fleet commander finally ordered full military readiness across slave sectors. "Prepare containment protocols," it said. But even as it spoke, its voice carried uncertainty, because containment assumes something still exists in one place, and humanity no longer seemed to stay in one place at all. Across the galaxy, reports multiplied. Entire sections of slave infrastructure going silent in synchronized waves, not destroyed, not attacked, just emptied. And in every case, no warning came before it happened, only a quiet pattern that no alien system had yet fully decoded, because humanity was no longer escaping one world at a time. It was no longer reacting. It was striking. And the galaxy had just realized the first strike was already over. The galaxy had never known silence like this before. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of loss without explanation. Across multiple star sectors, slave worlds were going dark in patterns no one could fully track. Not destroyed, not invaded, just unreachable. And now the Galactic Council was afraid. Inside the massive council chamber, lights dimmed slightly as emergency status activated. Dozens of alien leaders from different species gathered in tense formation, each one projecting fear in its own way. Some spoke too fast, others did not speak at all, but all of them were thinking the same thing. Control was failing. A holographic map of the galaxy floated in the center of the chamber. Red points marked every slave world, mining colony, and processing station. And one by one, those red points were turning gray. A council officer reported, 37% of human-controlled assets are no longer responsive. A pause followed, heavy and uncomfortable. Then another report arrived. No external fleet signatures detected in any region of loss. That sentence made the chamber colder because it removed the one explanation they trusted most: external attack. One council member tried to stay calm. "It is internal instability," it said. "Human systems are collapsing under pressure." But another voice interrupted sharply. "If they are collapsing, where are the bodies?" Silence again, because there were no bodies, no debris fields, no wreckage, no mass casualties, just absence. A senior analyst stepped forward, its data interface glowing with unstable streams. It spoke carefully, as if afraid of its own conclusion. "This is not collapse," it said. "This is coordination." The chamber reacted instantly. Voices rose, objections fired across the room. Impossible. Humans lack interstellar coordination systems. They are not advanced enough. But the analyst did not stop. It expanded the data display. Patterns appeared across sectors. Disappearances aligned with timing cycles. System interruptions matched human activity windows. Slave world failures were synchronized at a scale too precise for chance. And then came the worst observation. All events converged toward a central behavioral model. A council leader leaned forward slowly. "What model?" it asked. The analyst hesitated, then answered, "We do not yet understand it." That silence was more terrifying than any answer, because the galaxy had built its entire system on understanding control. And now control existed without understanding. On a distant fleet command station, captains reviewed combat readiness across slave sectors. Defense systems were active, weapons armed, patrols increased, and yet no target could be identified. One captain finally said what others feared: "We are preparing for an enemy we cannot see." And no one contradicted it. On a slave world still marked as operational, alien supervisors attempted direct intervention. They entered human work zones physically, increasing oversight, tightening control. But something felt wrong. Humans were still there, still working, still responding. Yet every action now felt slightly delayed, like reality itself was waiting for something unseen. A guard reported it nervously. "They respond, but not immediately," it said, as if they are listening to something else. The report was dismissed, but fear remained, because across the galaxy, similar descriptions were appearing: delay, mismatch, silence between action and reaction. On the council ship, emergency security protocols were activated. Containment fleets were dispatched to all remaining human-controlled zones. Orders were clear: maintain control at all costs. But even as fleets moved, something was already shifting underneath them. One council member stood apart from the discussion, watching the galaxy map. It spoke quietly, almost to itself. If they were only slaves, it said, they would not be doing this. No one answered it, because no one wanted to accept the alternative, that humanity was not reacting to oppression anymore, it was responding to structure, and structure implies intelligence. Reports continued arriving faster now, entire sectors losing human presence without trace, systems still functioning, but no longer accountable. A fleet commander finally gave a direct order: "Prepare full extermination protocols if control cannot be restored." But even as it said it, its voice shook slightly, because extermination assumes you know where your enemy is. And right now, the galaxy did not even know where humanity was standing. Across all reports, one truth became unavoidable: the humans were not escaping anymore. They were not hiding. They were assembling. And the Galactic Council had just realized something far worse than rebellion. They were no longer managing a slave species. They were inside the early stages of an unknown system-wide transformation. And the system was already too large to stop. The galaxy expected chaos, It expected rebellion, fire, explosions, resistance, and rage. That is what every enslaved species had always done before. But humanity did something else entirely. It stayed quiet until the very moment silence stopped being silence. Across every slave world, every mining station, every transport hub, and every hidden facility, systems began to behave strangely at the same exact time. Not breaking, not failing, but shifting, like something inside them had finally aligned. On the council ship, alarms flickered softly. Not full alerts, just minor inconsistencies across all monitored sectors. But there were too many of them now to ignore. A senior officer looked at the galaxy map and froze. Because all missing human zones were no longer random, they formed structure. Not geographic structure, not political structure, but behavioral structure. And that was the first moment the council understood. This was never escape. A deep silence filled the chamber as every leader stared at the same data. The analyst spoke again, voice lower now. All slave systems are no longer independent events, it said. They are connected, a council member whispered. Connected by what? The analyst hesitated, then answered, by humans. That single sentence changed everything in the room, because it implied something no one wanted to accept, that humans were not scattered prisoners anymore. They were a unified system. On a distant mining world, alien guards suddenly lost control access. Every terminal across the facility switched to a single repeated signal. No damage, no hacking traces, just takeover. A message appeared on every screen simultaneously. Short, calm, and human. We are not lost. The guards tried to override it, but their systems no longer responded as expected. Because control was no longer centralized, on another world, slave containment doors opened without command. Not all at once, but in a precise sequence, like something was unlocking them step by step. And humans did not run. They did not panic. They walked, calm, steady, coordinated, across thousands of ships and stations. Alien commanders realized something terrifying. There was no single command source to disable, no central leader to kill, no node to destroy, because humanity had distributed itself. In the council chamber, panic finally broke through authority. What is their command center? One leader demanded. Find their leader. Another shouted. Destroy coordination nodes. But the analyst shook its head slowly. There are no nodes, it said. There is no center. Confusion spread instantly. Then the analyst expanded the data again. Lines connected every human action across systems, not through technology alone, but through pattern synchronization, through learned timing, shared observation, and repeated structure. And then came the truth no one wanted to hear. This is not a rebellion, the analyst said quietly. This is emergence. The chamber fell silent. On a slave transport fleet, Captain Systems finally received emergency instructions. Extermination protocols were approved. Full destruction of all human-controlled assets authorized. But before any action could be taken, every system across the fleet went inactive for exactly 7 seconds. Not failure, not shutdown, just pause. And in that pause, something changed forever. Every human across every known slave world stopped at the same moment. Not in fear, not in confusion, but in awareness, as if something had finally finished connecting inside them. Then the final transmission arrived. Not from a ship, not from a world, not from a system, but from everywhere at once. A calm human voice echoed through all galactic council channels. We were never weak, it said. We were distributed. The council froze. The voice continued. You took individuals, but you created a network. Silence stretched across the chamber. Then the galaxy map began to change. Slave worlds no longer marked as assets or colonies, but as nodes in a living pattern, a structure the galaxy had unknowingly built itself. The voice spoke one last time. "You sold humanity into your systems," it said. "And systems always evolve." Then the transmission ended. No warning, no explosion, no attack signal, just silence again. But this time the silence felt different, because now the Galactic Council understood the truth too late. Humanity was not rising as an army. It was awakening as a network, and networks do not need permission to exist.